For my money, In a Better World, the 2010 offering from Danish director Susanne Bier, is the best and most honest exploration of bullying in cinema.
Jeg har slet ikke tænkt dig at gøre noget ved det der.
Hvad tycker du jag ska göra?
Du kunne tage hen og banke ham.
Menar du allvar?
Jamen, ja. Tør du ikke?
Det handlar inte om det vet du. Man går inte runt och slår folk. Det är inget som blir bättre av det. Vad tror du att du får för värde om du håller på så?
In exploring the subject, the focus is where we find the phenomenon most readily, in the schoolyard, where we also find Elias, a boy plagued by his classmates' hostilities. Elias has loving parents, but part of the issue is that his father, Anton, spends a great deal of time away. He's a doctor who volunteers time in an unspecified, war-torn area of Africa, where the same issues are explored on a grander scale, and with much higher stakes. The ubiquity of this pressure, the inclination of the strong to victimize the weak, is depicted as both complex and widespread. It's treated seriously in a way it seldom is in films. Personally, I have found that most movies dealing with similar subject matter have a tendency to oversimplify, although there are exceptions. Let the Right One In, for example, is a film that depicts kids bullying the protagonist in what I consider a very believable way.
Jag åker fram till dig och puttar ner dig. Du kommer inte göra någonting. Har jag rätt eller?
But In a Better World deals with bullying much more thoroughly. It doesn't shy away from any part of the subject and explores both cause and consequences, asks who is responsible and what can be done. The story follows the families of two boys, Elias and Christian. When Christian starts at a new school, his first impression is witnessing the bullying suffered by Elias at the hands of bigger kids. Their method is to isolate and belittle him, to victimize him in ways that don't tend to draw the notice of teachers. They cut off his path, they berate him, they let the air out of his bicycle tires when no one's around. It's small but constant aggression that offers little opportunity to stand up for oneself. And this, in my experience, is the reality. I'd like to offer this in contrast to a depiction of schoolyard bullying that I consider one of the weakest. A History of Violence contains scenes in which Jack Stahl is pushed around by the cool kids. First, Jack is targeted for stealing the thunder of the bully and winning a baseball game.
Woo!
Game over! Yellow's win!
Doing violence to me just seems pointless and cruel. Don't you think?
Let's do this, you punk bitch!
Shouldn't that be little punk-ass chicken shit faggot bitch?
Go ahead, bitch. Say something funny. Make me laugh.
When Jack has had enough, he beats his tormentor savagely. This is offered in the context of the film as part of a broader examination of the roles of violence in society and how it comes about. But to me, it is too far afield from any reality I'm familiar with. We often see this in fiction. Parents will even encourage kids to fight back in order to win the respect of the bully and their classmates at large.
Hey, let me borrow your bike.
No.
Come on, I'll give you some chips.
No.
Again and again in films, the victims push back. Sometimes too hard. When Christian befriends Elias, he becomes a threat to the bully's process, and they are quick to incentivize him to abandon his new friend. It's all about keeping Elias in a vulnerable state, isolated and helpless. So far has Elias internalized their assaults on his self-esteem that he apologizes to Christian for their attack. He inherently understands that it is the association with himself for which Christian is punished, and he accepts the blame for that. Both boys say nothing to their parents about the incident, and both manifest their frustration as hostility. Being a victim generates shame and anger. No one wants to be the kid that runs crying to mama.
Jeg hader dig.
Hvis du slår ham, så slår han dig. Så slår du ham, så slår du... Du holder det aldrig op.
du ikke forstå det? Det er sådan, der bliver krig.
Ikke hvis man slår hårdt nok første gang. Du ved ikke en skid om det, far. Sådan er det på alle skoler. Du er der ingen, der tør gøre mig noget.
One of the reasons bullying is so effective is that the victim wants to play off how much he's being hurt, to seem unaffected. To admit to his anguish would be a concession not only of defeat, but of one's own weakness, confirming the feeling of worthlessness that the bullies try to instill. The teachers, meanwhile, are aware of Elias's ill treatment, but ascribe it to his own habit of self-isolation, and they imply the fault lies with his parents. In real life, I believe that the failure of schools and other authorities to deal with bullying, the evasions of responsibility and misplaced blame, are a huge factor in the ongoing problem.
Det ender jo med, at vi må flytte Elias til en anden skole. Det kan simpelthen ikke være rimeligt, når det er Sofus, der er en lille sadistisk psykopat.
Christian isn't like Elias. He's full of rage over the death of his mother and has no outlet for it. He's hardened himself against showing any signs of vulnerability. Faced with the aggression of bullies, he strikes back. It's a frightening, violent outburst, not the sort of satisfying comeuppance often depicted. I draw a comparison with Let the Right One in which Oscar's retribution is linked to his corruption. Both are out of proportion with what the bully has done, and neither depicts the revenge as a positive occurrence.
Du rømmer aldrig igen! Fatter du det? Du skal ikke rømme mig eller nogen andre. Jeg er fucking ligeglad om du dør eller ej. Kan du fatte?
Nonetheless, in Elias's eyes, Christian has become his savior as well as a fast friend, a protector that he in turn is inclined to protect by helping him avoid responsibility. And he learns a lesson.
Det er så alvorligt, det her. Jeg risikerer at miste synet på det ene øje.
Så kan du bare lade folk være i fred.
Christian gives his knife to Elias, and in so doing both cements his complicity and rewards him with a new feeling of confidence. He gives Elias permission to break rules. Elias finds himself less a victim of timidity, now bolstered by the feeling of having gotten away with something. It's the confidence not of self-esteem, but is more akin to that of a bully, an assuredness that one is not going to be caught.
Wow, det er godt nok vildt.
Next to the excitement of that, his father's admonitions of prioritizing safety seem like a feeble appeal to his weakness, to a side of himself that he sees as to blame for his victimization. It's an appeal to be governed by his vulnerability, and not what he perceives as strength. And this is where Elias's admiration of his father becomes tested, as an attempt to end conflict between children ends in a humiliation.
Men vad håller ni på med? Varför bråkar ni om en gunga?
Hvad sker der her, mand? Hvad sker der? Hvad sker der?
Jeg så bare på gyngen, og så kom jeg bare irriteret.
The other boy's father is an adult, nevertheless still a bully. He slaps and shoves Anton. His son sees his father apparently defeated, and observes the contempt of Christian, who is inclined by his own experiences to despise father figures.
Skulle du ikke ringe til politiet?
Ja, far. Christian har ret. Du bliver altså nødt til at ringe til politiet.
Nej, det ska vi inte.
Han slog dig.
Nu åker vi hem. Nu sätter ni ner i bilen allihopa. Ni får äta glassen i bilen. Kom. Vi pratar inte mer om det.
In the familiar but rarely tested schoolyard contest of my father could beat up your father, Elias perceives a loss. It's a sad situation. As viewers, we know that Anton is noble and courageous. The petty malevolence of a local bully is insignificant next to the evils he has witnessed and confronted elsewhere. It would be beneath him to engage it in kind, with violence. But to his son, he appears cowardly and ineffectual. The strength needed to remain resolutely non-violent in the face of provocation is beyond his capacity to recognize. All Elias perceives is his father's victimization and apparent weakness.
Hallå?
There's a scene in To Kill a Mockingbird in which Atticus Finch refuses to be provoked by the belligerence of Bob Ewell. Finch's son Jem witnesses the exchange and is impressed with his father's high-handedness. He understands that Atticus could fight back. He could lose his composure and give Ewell a beating. But he is the better man, and Jem sees the strength in that. It's a lesson he learns, and comes away with greater respect for his father. Not so with Elias.
Det är han som var en idiot. Ska jag slå honom så är jag lika stor idiot. Eller så hamnar jag i fängelse och då har du ingen pappa. Och så är det han som vinner i alla fall, förstår du?
Men det kunne være, mor synes, det var dejligt, hvis ikke du var sådan en wimp.
He's learning a different lesson. Respect for the violent. Realizing his son is taking the wrong message from the incident, Anton decides to demonstrate to the boys, Atticus style, that he is not governed by cowardice, but by reserve. He confronts the other father again.
En jävla idiot som får någon märklig form av tillfredsställelse genom att tro att du har makt över folk. Det har du inte.
Nu upp, Lars!
Det är ingen fara, pojken.
Vad är det du vill? Va?
Vad jag vill?
Ja, vad är det egentligen du vill?
Jag tror att jag är här för att jag vill visa de här barnen att jag inte...
Va? Hvad vil du?
Nu går vi hjem,
Skal du have mere? Va?
og vi skal hjem nu.
Skrid hjem til Sverige. Ikke? Din svans.
Det gjorde inte ont. Det är ingenting att vara rädd för. Det var det enda han kunde. Han förlorade. Han är en kämpenarr. Förstår ni det?
Forstå hvad?
The result is not what he'd hoped for.
Som man inte behöver lägga mer energi på.
Han er en kæmpe nar.
Ja, precis.
Jeg tror ikke selv, han føler, at han tabte.
Der er en.
Han går bare rundt. Alle er bange for ham, men der er ingen, der tør gøre noget.
Det var bare fyrværkeri.
Ved du, hvor meget sort krudt der er her? Flere kilo. Man kunne lave en gigabombe.
Guided by Christian, and in the absence of effective action on his father's part, Elias conspires with his friend to take revenge on this new bully.
Han blev bare ved med at slå din far. Det kan godt være, at din far ikke var bange. Men han blev bare ved med at slå ham. Hvis vi hævner os, så kunne han lære, at man ikke skulle opføre sig sådan.
Hvor er det sygt! Prøv lige at tænke, når vi laver en ud af de store tygrejmer, hvor vild den bliver. Hans bil, ikke? Den bliver fuldkommen smadret i smås.
Det ved jeg ikke rigtigt.
Ved du hvad? Hvis du ikke vil være med, ikke? Så kan jeg godt have min kniv tilbage nu.
With that threat, Christian, in his own way, becomes a bully too. Meanwhile, back in Africa, Anton is dealing with similar issues writ large. The local warlord has been butchering pregnant women, murdering their babies, for fun.
I didn't think she'd make it. I've seen that type of injury before. It's the work of a local villain. Big man.
This is a man unashamed of his violence. He's not introspective about what drives him, and he wouldn't be interested in Anton's lessons any more than the Danish father was. But now the warlord, the so-called big man, needs Anton's help.
Are you doctor? Jag ser han.
Can you fix my leg?
In this confrontation, we see, even if the children don't, that Anton truly is a man of integrity and courage.
I decide that! No. I decided.
He knows that there's no point in seeking revenge on this man. He knows others will only take his place if he dies. It's his job to preserve life, to oppose violence and death, and he's determined to do that job.
Bag. She's gone. Anton.
Bag. Check her pulse, please. Check
Anton.
her pulse. Bag.
Stop. Stop. Anton,
pulse,
Anton,
please.
stop. Stop.
Check her mag. Stop.
Stop.
As a doctor, Anton's work has mitigated the harm caused by this big man, but it seems a constant and feeble resistance in the face of overwhelming violence. Just as Christian questioned his efficacy, Anton is faced with doubts about whether he's doing the right thing in merely assisting the afflicted, in failing to fight against those who oppress.
You leave! Leave! Leave right now! If you can't stand up, you can go! 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 You leave! You go ahead!
And in the end, he finds no answer. He abandons the issue and allows others to have their revenge on the monster. He's tried to be a principled man. He's tried not to contribute to the violence. And he's failed. This isn't a movie that's going to sell us an easy answer. It explores the nature and ramifications of bullying dynamics, but it doesn't pretend that there's some quick fix. Just as he's unable to prevent anger and violence from overtaking his camp, he is not able to provide his son with the guidance to avoid his own misguided attempt at revenge.
Christian, ikke? Hans farfar han døde for lang tid siden. Og han har sådan noget fyrværkeri liggende ude i laden. Og der er ikke nogen, der har opdaget det.
Och det har varit så stressigt här idag, Elias, så jag undrar om vi skulle kunna höras imorgon istället.
Ja, okay, far.
Jeg er med.
Jeg vil gerne lave den bombe. Lad os bombe det svinsbil. Jeg synes, du har ret. Han har fortjent det.
There's a common notion that if one rises to the challenge of a bully and fights back, you can win his respect and end the abuse. Somehow this is seen as a kind of Darwinian process through which weaker kids become strengthened in their youth, as though their victimization doesn't leave them damaged, and as though bullies cease to exist in the adult world.
Lad være med at kigge tilbage.
In real life, bullies don't target the kid who can fight back. They don't pick on the kid who wins the game. They don't target the class wit who can rally support. They target the isolated kid, the helpless one, the one that won't fight back. And let the right one in, Oscar is very passive, even languid when victimized. It's an unattractive quality that makes him the more repulsive to his tormentors, and all the more suited to targeting in the future. And it doesn't stop with maturity. In a Better World takes us to a place where the adult bully is undeniable. From playground to battlefield, there's no escape from this destructive process, and no benefit comes from failing to address it. There is great harm done in the world because these issues remain unresolved. I'm only touching on the surface here, and I've deliberately omitted some of the more affecting scenarios explored in the movie. In a Better World is a nuanced film with gripping drama and the complexity of a novel. What begins with the apparently simple dynamics of schoolyard bullying expands to explore what moves people to violence, the anger and shame that can motivate cruelty, and the cycle that perpetuates as victims either suffer or become vengeful. It shows us how easy it is to give in to feelings that drive us to violence, but it also gives us hope that it is possible for a person consumed by anger and frustration to find redemption, to come back from the precipice and withdraw from the combative field. It gives us hope that a better world is possible. This, in my opinion, is a film everyone should see and think about in earnest.
In this family, we do not solve our problems by hitting people!
No, in this family, we shoot them.
Jack,